Lancaster County mid-year budget.
That link's working for you, is it? Is the OpenGov link not working for people?
I've got it.
Mine's just
Wait,
spinning.
where did I
Let me
go with
see
it?
while we get out here.
Well, I can go to the website and get there.
Seems like we're moving a little slow.
Oh, it is coming up. It is just moving slow.
Okay. All righty.
Probably just the traffic on the transparency portal, Sean. Everybody's out there today.
Everybody's out there.
They're all watching it.
Yeah. So once we kind of get out of here, just kind of, talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to just kind of go over some of the items that's kind of driving stuff, what kind of drove our budget. We will have individuals get up throughout the day to talk about some of those things that drove our current year budget, and we'll talk about what's happening in some of the departments for this year, as well as what are they projecting out at this point in time for another budget year. So we'll kind of try to talk about all kinds of different budget stuff today. What I want to remind everybody, on the transparency portal, off to the left, you've got, under the Lancaster County emblem, you've got reports and stories. I'm going to go out to stories right now, and I'm going to go out to the 22-23 adopted budget. This just kind of reminds us, what did we deal with this current year budget that is happening.
Oh, gotcha.
First off, our current year budget is at, $278.4 million. That's probably the largest budget that Lancaster County has had before. And a lot of that is, and Michaela will give an update later, is ARPA funding. When you drop $60 million into a budget document, it's going to have that kind of effect. The one thing to remind everybody is, on the property tax side coming into this year's budget, we actually reduced the levy by about 1.24%. We took about, I think it's about a 2.72% increase on the property tax side. Some of the items that we'll talk about today is some of the items that drove our budget. What drove some of our increases last year? One of the first groups that will be talking to us is the courts, the court-appointed attorneys. Those were bumped up, and we'll kind of see how those are affecting us. The other thing that you will see is, if you remember right, we had two large union contracts last year that drove a lot of dollars for us. When we start talking about additional appropriations, last year, between those two large union contracts, we had to transfer about $1.25 million for additional appropriations to close that fiscal year out, because it hadn't been budgeted, and that was the net effect on there. When we talk about additional appropriations, I feel like I always need to remind us on what drives additional appropriations, because sometimes people will take it as a negative thing that I'm coming forward for additional appropriations. The way Lancaster County is set up is we force that a lot. We force it, When we go into a budget year, we budget what we know. So if we don't have a union contract set up, we don't budget an estimated cost of living. We figure out we're gonna go through the year, and we're gonna see how that affects us. Because sometimes, And this year, as we go through the day, you'll find out this year is kind of the year where it makes total sense on us not estimating out numbers. So when we get into the numbers, you will see that the numbers are fairly low this year. A couple things have happened. Health insurance. We changed our policy on how we pay for, or when we pay for health insurance. We always used to pay for the next month. We changed that up, so in January, we're now paying current month. So the month of December was almost like a freebie. You know, it did not hit those departments' budgets for that month, so they really got one free month of health insurance for this year. It's a one-time deal. It helps right now, but it, you know, things like that happen throughout the year. So, so that will come into play, and you'll see that when we start talking numbers, how much that came into play. So we also, we also had a lot of our union contracts kind of set up, so we were able to build some of those into the budget. So that kind of comes into play. But what we'll also find out is we made some decisions during the budget process last year that that we were like, okay, to get us to where we were at, we're going to force some numbers down, and then we're going to see how the year goes. This year, now a lot of times I probably shouldn't, a lot of the times when it's a good thing for budget stuff, the departments might not feel like it's a good thing for them always. So let's just remind ourselves that I look at things a lot different than most people do. So on some of these court-appointed counsel, we reduce that dollar amount. Right now, when we look at mid-year, we're still underneath those dollars that we reduced. So that actually worked out in our favor. Sometimes I'm up here during the year saying, we did this, it didn't work out. We made a couple decisions with the corrections budget and the sheriff's budget, dealing with some of just the staff turnover or just the staffing levels. And as everybody would probably tell you, staffing changes are still an issue out there. So what happens is those budgets are still within those dollar amounts, which helps us for mid-year, but at some point in time, once we get back to that level, it's going to come back into play. But at mid-year, it's actually worked out. So anyway, so those were kind of some of the items that we dealt with last year. I'm going to jump back to my 22-23. I'm going to go down to about page 6. I've just got a couple items on here that I use for our County 101 and stuff like that with the senators, just to kind of remind everybody what's been happening with our budget the last few years.
Sorry, Dennis, what'd you jump to there?
It's one of the documents on the agenda, the fiscal year 22-23 mid-year or something or another.
On the agenda?
Yes. You see like 3 different PDF documents.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
that top one up there.
Yeah.
So on here, this will kind of show you what's been happening with our property tax levy the last 10 years. So you will see that our levy right now is at 26.0814. And as you can also see, as we've kind of moved along, within the last 10 years, that levy is at the lowest that it's been. Sean, you might be able to see that if you can you get there? Is it getting,
Yeah, my computer's just going slow. I'm fine. Keep going.
so.
Okay, okay.
The page 7 just kind of shows you, when we talk property taxes, I like to always point out that, if you live in the city of Lincoln, here's kind of the breakdown of it. Lancaster County falls at 13.12% of the overall budget. So, moving to the next page, page 8, I kind of like this graph. This kind of shows valuation versus property tax. So many times when we think about it, we'll always hear, the talk about always taking everything that the valuation gives you. And what this will show you, and this is why I like to kind of point it out, that, here at Lancaster County, we make our decisions on an annual basis, and we make it on what do we need for that year. So what this shows you is, over the years, even like last year, the valuation came in a little over 4%. We only needed 2.72%, so that's what we took. The year before that, it was 11% valuation versus us taking the 4.17. So, this one, to me, just kind of shows how we make decisions on an annual basis, and that's what really kind of drives what our property tax levy is going to be. Last one up there is just this one I took to County 101 this year just to kind of show, the discussion on inheritance tax. I never like to get in the discussion on is inheritance tax the greatest or the worst thing out there. All that I want to show is if inheritance tax goes away, this is the dollar amounts that Lancaster County's budget loses. We don't have very many opportunities or other sources of revenue to offset that. So I just like to remind everybody, 1 penny equals 3.3 million. So when you start looking at last year when we got about 10 million, start doing the calculation, you're talking over 3 cents. So it's, not a huge number, but 3 cents, that's a player. That's a player in the levy.
It is.
Enormous.
Significant.
Enormous.
So that's the main thing I like to point out is we don't have any other revenue sources. It just puts more pressure back on the property tax side.
What are you going to budget for inheritance tax this year, do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know yet. I mean, because
Fair answer.
every time, it seems like every time the legislature kind of tweaks the percentages and all of that, it always feels like we ought to lose a portion of our inheritance tax coming to us. As you will see, the last couple years, when I think revenue should decrease,
Right.
they haven't.
Right.
So
Revenue from inheritance tax?
yes,
Okay.
and because it's all based off of which bucket do you fall in,
Yeah.
and there's no way to guesstimate that. So some of it will be on when we get into the budget process. Some of it will be on sometimes just how do we balance this thing.
Inheritance tax is always kind of just it's the hardest one to estimate what's coming because quite frankly, you just don't know who's going to pass away. It's not more complicated than that.
Right.
It's just what it is.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it totally is. And to also just kind of remind everybody, with our inheritance tax, we budget it straight into the general fund, so it's really just used straight as property tax relief. We don't apply it to sinking funds. We don't do anything like that. We strictly just use it to operate off of.
Is there a report later on that'll show us what has come in this year
Yes.
for inheritance tax?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back over to the transparency portal, and I'm gonna go under the reports instead of the stories.
That's a nice transition, Dennis. I mean, both sides are important.
Yeah. So on the transparency portal, I've kind of cleaned it up a little bit since last budget season. I always put out the budget hearings so that that anybody that wants to go out, they can see who we're talking to that day. I've kind of removed those because they don't really mean anything. Once we get back into budget season, I'll start doing that same thing. So here's what's out there right now. The first report is the Lancaster County 22-23 budget. Then's general fund budget stuff. We show tax levy. And then the ones that we use really for tracking purposes during the fiscal year are the next four. The Lancaster County monthly budget to actual, that's got all the funds in it. I then show general fund monthly budget to actual. Then I show some other actual stuff and then some other comparisons based off of December's. You know, where were we at 6 months into this fiscal year versus other fiscal years? And then I've got FTEs on there. So budget stuff, tracking budget stuff, that's what's kind of out there right now. So if you jumped into the monthly budget to actual all funds, this will kind of show you where our numbers are at this point in time. The way a lot of these are set up is the budget column is going to be off to your far right, and then you'll see each of the months, July through December, up there. If you scrolled down on the left side under that report, you can see all the different views that I've kind of built in there. So this one here is just kind of, the first one just kind of shows all funds, budget to actual. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see dollar amounts. And then all the way over to the right will kind of show you variances and percentages. So today, when we're kind of looking at a lot of stuff that not all reports have variances, but any of them that do have variances, you really want to see that percentage to be 50% or more. That will say halfway through the year, we're at least on pace. Few items you'll see today. You might see 49, 48. So still kind of on pace just to kind of see where we're at. But this first one just kind of shows you everything going on with all funds. The reason I always have a separate one for the general fund is because general fund drives all the property tax.
Yeah.
So this one here, we've got a lot of different things in. General fund will really focus a lot more on the property tax side of things. So if you jump to the second view, which is the salaries and benefits, and you go down to the bottom of the page and kind of scroll over, you'll see that our salaries and wages have about 51% left. Our employee benefits have about 54%. So right about on. Now you'll see the employee benefits being a little bit better off. Again, it's because of that month of December.
Because the negative number is good.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, as you can see, kind of the easy way. If you look at that other compensation costs, you'll see that our budget was $914,254. We've spent $914,205. So that negative 0.01 is to the good. And by the way, those costs are probably done for the year. So those are paying a lot of times different maybe insurance pieces that we do kind of either a one-time hit from a budget and we move it. So that would show you how that negative number is to the good.
So just to make sure I'm following accurately, you know, you go to total, I'm on salaries and benefits
Okay.
slide. And down below in the data, you go to total and go across to the variance. We are at minus 51.47, meaning that that's how much of the budgeted amount we have left, which, given that it's
Yeah.
over 50%, means
Right.
if we continue this way,
Here, that's where we want to be.
we're in.
Right.
We're
So
right on track.
So sometimes, you know, you look at that December 22, 23 number at 45 million down there, you go over and you see you've got 47.7 left. So that just kind of tells you, we're just, you know, we're really on pace.
Yeah.
We're really on pace right now, and that's kind of, you know, that's kind of the good thing that's happening
Yeah.
with this budget. So, some of the other views that I've got on there, I'm just kind of breaking out by really type: public safety, law enforcement, public safety, other, you know, human services, community development, things like that. I've tried to break it out kind of that way, because a lot of the times for some of the reporting stuff, that's how we kind of show it. But that will also allow for you to take a look at what's kind of happening in those pieces. Now, the one thing you want to remember with some of these in this overall budget is that certain grants and stuff like that are also pieces of that. So human services in this one isn't only just our human services budget, but it's all the different grants that have come in
Right.
and stuff too. So when you're looking at strictly what's happening operational wise over in human services, then you want to make sure you're in the general fund for that.
I have a question about this report.
Okay?
So I'm looking just down at the variances, just to kind of help me see. I see a big variance under federal forfeitures. It's at 86. Can you just help me understand what that line item is?
Right. So federal forfeitures, for the most part, are going, the biggest piece of it is going to probably be the forfeitures that the sheriff's office receives. So in that, we set up, you know, the forfeitures has a balance to it, and it sits up, and then we budget a certain piece of that. And when we budget that, it kind of depends on what's going to happen for the year. So at this point in time, what that's just going to tell you is, compared to the budget, they've only spent that small piece of it. Now that forfeiture money sits over in the grants fund. It can only be spent on certain types of items. So
it's money we actually keep and can spend in appropriate ways.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So what?
Because there's less income as well, or is this?
Now,
This isn't a balance. This is
yeah.
just
This piece is
expenditure.
just what did we budget,
Okay.
and that budget is usually based off of what kind of balance we had, and so this is really kind of just kind of tell you on some of it. It just depends on what the activity is for the year, because the majority of the time, Ben could probably tell you he's probably got it set. He's probably got it set up to be spent on certain things. Now it's just depending on when does that timing actually happen that it needs to be spent.
Because we don't drive this. The sheriff's department comes to us and say, we want to do X, Y, or Z, and we have forfeiture assets to cover it. So it's all under their prerogative.
So a lot of times, especially when you look in the all fun stuff, that's when you will tend to see a lot of times some of the bigger percentages, because sometimes it depends on when those grants are happening, when those things. When we go and you look at the general fund, then you'll kind of see where we're a little bit closer to the 50% numbers all the time. So anyway, that's what this report's doing. So let's jump down to the next one, the general fund budget to actual numbers. So here, here again, this is kind of set up in the same format so that you can kind of take a look to see, where are we at in things. So if you're looking at that first view, you scroll down the variance side over there, you'll see that on the capital outlay side, we've spent a little bit more than half of what we budgeted. You'll see on the transfer side, we haven't transferred at least half of it. A lot of times on the transfers side of things, I also try to wait to see cash flow wise, when does it make the most sense. I don't like to transfer a lot of money in January and February because we're waiting for March to show up with our property tax collections.
We appreciate that.
So, if you jump down into the public safety law enforcement, where you got the corrections, the sheriff, youth services, community corrections, now's when you can kind of look at those variances off to the side, and you can kind of, here's where we can kind of start talking a little bit more. 50% makes a lot more sense because it's really the operating side of things. And as you can see with this group here, they're all sitting, what I would say is pretty decent right now through the first half of the year. You can kind of do that with any of the views down there. That way you can, I jumped on to public safety other. You can go over to that variance and you can kind of see right down the line where we're at in some of those items. But for the most part, fiscal year 23 numbers are looking pretty good. The last 6 views that I have on this one is just over the last few years. I like to just kind of track what's happening on the revenues and expenditure side. So if you pull up that fiscal year 22 actuals, it just kind of shows you by month what happens with revenues and expenses. And it kind of shows you in July, revenues pretty decent, it kind of flattens out, and you can kind of see where I always talk about us waiting for March. That's where it kind of peaks again, and then we start. But and then the expenditure side, you just see that kind of gradually increasing on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. So this is why I kind of say, hey, March is what we're always kind of looking for.
Going back to your public safety's other expenditures by department report,
Yes.
I know we're going to talk about this later, but there was the increased fees for hiring attorneys. Was that under county court, or would that be under something else?
They will be under each of the 3 courts: county court, district court, and juvenile court.
Okay, so it just depends on where they're.
So each one of them has a piece underneath there.
Okay.
So, yeah. But so anyway, so those are what those kind of reports are doing. Let's jump into that next report. That's just the general fund actual to actual. This is more now where I will show you some of the numbers of December's versus December's. So first report there will kind of show you wages and salaries and benefits.
Okay.
So what this kind of shows you is, now I scrolled down to the numbers. What you will see as of December of this year, you know, those salaries and benefits were about $2.2 million more than they were last year. The year before that, you know, we were about 1.4. You know, before that, we were about 1.3. So what this really tells you is, you know, when we did those union negotiations last year, when we've done some of those cost of livings, just, you know, the whole inflation, everything that we've been trying to do, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, here's what's happening. Salaries have increased at a little bit higher pace than they have over the years. So this is what it's showing you.
Salaries and new FTEs would impact that.
Yes, it would. Now, when we went into this current year budget that we're in, all the FTEs that were approved were set up so that it would have really very little or no impact on property tax. So, to me,
But this isn't just dependent on property tax. This is total salaries and expenditures, right? So when you see a
this is general fund. So we'd be talking general fund FTEs, and last year, or this year, the budget we're in, we only approved couple items at the crisis center and then out at the engineer's office. Those were the only new FTEs we approved
on the general fund. Okay.
And all the,
on all funds.
and we,
Those were the only FTEs
Yeah.
that were approved.
Those were property tax neutral
yeah.
Yes.
in that.
We
And
had the department heads show us, basically
And
show us
Scott,
their work.
and Scott and Pam will both address those today, just to kind of talk about where we trying to still go with those. Most of this stuff here that's driving this December is just contracts and cost of living and all of that. Not really a ton in the FTE side. The other views that I've got set up over here, again, are by those types, so that you can kind of, you know, if you wanted to see in public safety other, you can kind of take a look at it over the last 5 Decembers on what's happening and what's kind of driving those numbers. Let's jump to my last report that I want to talk about. This will kind of show you the inheritance tax numbers and stuff like that at the end of, or at December.
This is general fund.
General fund comparison of actual amounts by fiscal year. Let's jump down to property tax collections. You can kind of see there what's been happening with the collections over the last 7 years. And what you will actually see this year is we're actually even down just a little bit. Now, sometimes in December, it kind of depends on what's happening, because if you remember over the years, sometimes it will come out that if you get taxes paid, it might be a benefit here or there for you personally for tax purposes. So sometimes December kind of fluctuates a little bit depending on what's able to drive some of that stuff. So you will see right now that our collections are down just a little bit. Let's jump into motor vehicle tax collections. And you will see there, in December of '21, we probably kind of hit the peak. It's kind of leveled off these last couple years. So again, we're kind of right on what was happening last year. Next one's inheritance tax, and you can kind of see the numbers there also. And this year we're just right about on pace, about 1.14% increase from last year. And that's why I say that's what kind of makes it tough, Sean, when we're like,
Oh, I know.
okay, legislature's tweaked some things, but here's where we're still sitting. Interest income, next one. You can see on here, which makes sense. Last year, where interest rates were at this point in time, not too many things were just earning a ton of interest. As you can see now, as feds have done some stuff there, revenue-wise, it's starting to bump. But make sure when we look at that, we scroll down to the numbers, and even though that chart's increasing, we're still talking it's only $440,000. So yes, it's a good thing, but it's not a major player when we start talking overall budget.
About 1/10 of a penny, about 1.15 of a penny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's a good thing because of bad things going on.
yes. So the graph makes it look like, whoa, we're really going, but that's why sometimes we just have to
Right. It doesn't change the world, yeah.
to check there. Now, one of our revenues that has kind of been going pretty good the last couple of years is our register of deeds fees over there. And what this chart will show you is what everybody kind of understands. Things have slowed down.
Yeah, the cool off.
Yep, things have slowed down. So when things slow down, that means our revenues slow down too. So that's where we're kind of at on that.
And you say that, again, still learning a lot here, but
Yeah.
you say that because there's less houses being sold, or what is it that's causing
And
less?
refinances, the refinancing piece of it also,
Okay.
it's kind of both of those types of things. So that kind of then drives in what we collect over there.
Okay.
The other ones down here are just other bigger players in our general fund revenues. And you'll kind of hear this from the departments. You'll see out at the Youth Services Center right now, revenues are tweaking up. Most of that's going to be based off of numbers out there. Community corrections. As we talk about that, you'll see fees kind of tweaking down over there. A lot of that kind of depends on certain numbers in certain programs. And then I'm just showing sheriff and attorney revenues, and most of the time with those two departments, fairly consistent depending on some of the activity, but doesn't tend to be a ton of fluctuation out there. What that really kind of tells you is in the general fund, those are our other revenue sources that aren't property tax. So there's a few of them out there, but when you look at total dollar amounts, those total dollar amounts only make up a small piece. And that's why that's why I will tell you every time we're making decisions in the general fund, there's some type of pressure on the property tax side. So anyway, so those are some of the numbers that are out there right now. Everything is close to being on pace right now this year, but it's something we deal with on an annual basis depending on what's happening. As we've talked about salaries and benefits a little bit, one of the things that I told you I was gonna bring up today was maybe us thinking about some type of policy on the reclassifications out there in job titles and stuff like that. You know, as things have changed the last year or so in the inflation and all of that, and you've seen it in union contracts and stuff like that, we're starting to see a few more asks for reclasses, maybe looking at market values, looking at things like that, which our HR department kind of handles. And I think we need to look at the policy to maybe kind of help both sides. Because on one side of it, departments will be like, hey, HR doesn't seem to be getting to these real quickly. And from HR side is, hey, we've got a lot more coming at us that we need to take a look at. And so I think we need to maybe look at this a little bit, because I think maybe on some of these reclasses and market values, I think maybe we need to get the departments to maybe get in front of you, the county board, up front to say, is this something that makes sense at this point in time? Because I think we want to make sure from the HR standpoint that HR understands, yes, the board is in favor of this, so that they understand, yes, this is something that needs to be done and needs to be done on a timely basis. Now, on that, one of my thoughts has been, should we, and I talked to Nicole over at HR about this, should we make this a 2-time-a-year discussion? So at mid-year and at budget, so that the one thing that I always tell you about is when we make a decision on 1 or 2 things throughout the budget year, and then the next year budget numbers come rolling in, then we're like, what just happened here? How come those numbers have increased? And then it's always like, how do we reduce them? Well, it's tough to reduce them because we've already made that decision.
Sure.
So I just think that we need to come up with something so that both sides understand the time period and maybe what needs to be done to make sure that HR understands, yes, county board wants to look into this. Thoughts?
So you're saying instead of doing it the way we're doing it now, we would just entertain those changes when we're in a situation where we can talk about those changes and the impact they have on the budget that we have in place?
And we can also have HR understand, you know what, I understand you got this list, but county board's talking about it this time of the year and this time of the year.
I think a locked-in twice-a-year conversation makes sense. I mean, we kind of unofficially do it.
We've tried to move
Tried to,
there.
yeah.
We've tried to move there, but
It's where we've been heading anyways.
I think right now, when you look at what HR has over there, they've got a good sized list. And I know some of these departments are probably sitting there thinking, why isn't HR getting to some of this stuff? And so I think we need to have something set up so that both sides understand, you know what? Yeah, we can make the request, but here's when we're taking, here's the 2 times a year we're trying to take this into effect.
Yeah.
I think formalizing it's smart.
And I think it's really good that we zero in on those two times, because otherwise you're taking a shotgun approach, and that's not good.
Right. And and the other thing that happens is a lot of times you guys will ask, on that one position stuff, do you have room in your budget this
Yeah,
year?
that's right.
99 to 100%, the answer is going to be yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's probably a right answer at the time, but it's also, we also have to remember next year, that salary number is going to be up a higher percentage than what anybody's maybe thinking of. And then we sit back and say, well, what's going on here? What happened? And then the answer is, well, we approved a couple things. So what I'd like to do is just kind of make it so that we get everybody on the same page. Both departments and HR understand the time frame we're shooting for, and then we're not sitting around wondering, is somebody getting something done or not?
We make that as something that we direct Dave to plan, or do we make it a motion, or what?
Now, Dave, I don't know, do we need to get something in writing?
I don't know that we would have, say, like a resolution or a policy. I think we have some kind of motions that will entertain those during, and then we can work with HR and how.
Okay.
Right, and then we can kind of come back, you know, I talked to Nicole, she was all right with the 2-year, because then that kind of gives them a time to know, hey, we got to be through this, and we got to be through it by this time frame. So I think it's good for actually all, so that we all kind of understand when things are actually happening.
Well, I would make the motion that would go to 2 times a year, where we start looking at reclassifications and job titles and so forth.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Commissioner, I have one question. So then would we implement this starting with the budget cycle this year, Dennis? That would be
So,
when it would go
so
into
what's
effect?
what's happening right? Yes, I think so. I think what I would do is, because I know HR's got a list over there right now, and what I would tell Nicole is, hey, county board would like the stuff you've got right now. Let's get through it for this next, for this next budget season, and so that they have an idea of what's there. They got a time frame to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would be presented with each individual, the appropriate department's budget request would include the reclassifications.
Yes, yes.
That seems very orderly.
I mean, so that we've got it all there.
Yeah.
It's what we've been trying to do, and we've just never made it official. This makes sense to me.
I guess I have a question when you say reclassification, and we've done some reclassifications in the 4 weeks that I've been here. And those have seemed to be very timely and pertinent at that time. So that would be saying none of those could happen until February. So we would not do any reclassifications even of current employees until June,
That
even
po-
if,
Yeah, that point was a little bit of my concern here,
Yeah.
was we want people to have enough autonomy to do what they need to do in their department. But I'm also wondering, because we have this list, yeah, I think it takes like 6 months or better sometimes that we're hearing about somebody wants to do something until it actually gets done.
Right.
And maybe this would make it tighter and more streamlined so that it would get done.
I mean,
'cause
that's what-
I'm a little torn here.
I mean, that's what I'm kind of hoping for.
Yeah.
Because right now, that list has a few on there. And but right now, it also just kind of takes place on how quick does HR get through something. So the ones you've probably been seeing is stuff that they're knocking out onesie twosies at a time. And this way, then, there's more of a deadline from HR side to know that, hey, everything here, we need to get through it.
And I think on some of those, that process started many, many
Yes.
months ago.
Yes.
And it just took
could you
it.
tell me what the motion was again, real quick?
Oh, is that we do approve the 2 times a year at mid-year, and then also at the budget time, in order to do any types of reclassification.
I just wonder if it might be better for us to start, because that would include new positions, correct? Or is it?
No.
That's what I'm
No.
trying.
Her
that's
motion
what-
was just reclasses.
No, just
Okay.
reclassifications.
Job duties change, person takes on more
F-
responsibility.
FTEs, for the most part, what we try to do with FTEs, we've tried to move it to just budget time. Now,
Right.
is there times when something comes up? Sure. Sure there is. But we've tried to move it, because what happens is when we do that, then we never remember about what happens when the next budget season comes out, and then we start trying to make some decisions on, hey, how about we just take 1% from every department's budget? Then that doesn't always make sense. So we've tried to clean it up so that we're taking action really once or twice a year.
I think that this is a really thoughtful decision on your part, or a thoughtful recommendation, because you work with the budgets and you see what the fluctuations are and how that can impact. So,
So we have a motion and a second. Leslie, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 So once I have more conversations with Nicole, we'll be back. Let's take that break, and then we'll talk court-appointed attorneys.
All right.
Hooray.
Boy.
So we'll be back at 10 o'clock.
Ish.
Yes, might be 10 o'clock. Well,
Well, that clock's wrong.
that clock is off.
Yeah. It's 10 o'clock now. Let's come back at 10:10.
Be back at 10:10.
Okay.
We're not,
He's got some other business he needs to get off to also, so.
I know, he's been gracious with his time.
So we'll let Amanda kind of we'll start talking about the district court. So go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah.
Okay, where do we find the district court here?
So what I've got here is, under the department responses PDF that's on the agenda,
Oh, okay.
and the way it sounds, it'll probably take you a while to get to it.
Like
But
my
what-
letter?
Yeah. Once you get to it, go to page 13.
I'm not seeing.
On the agenda, it's under item A, and you scroll down to department responses.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh,
It is taking a minute to come
Right
up.
there.
department response.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
But
you.
sometimes it takes.
We got
Oh,
to pay
that
the
one's actually
broad.
coming up
Yeah.
fairly quick.
That's what it feels like right now.
So page 13.
Seeing this blue line slowly, very slowly
No.
go across my computer.
All right, good morning. It's good to
There.
see everybody. Thanks for inviting us over. I'm happy to be standing here and to be able to tell you that the district court is under budget
Good.
for its legal services. We didn't think that would happen since we raised rates. And
Right.
sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So, some good news to report. Attorneys have stopped leaving in alarming rates. They still do leave on occasion, but it's more because they have gotten so many appointments that they feel overwhelmed. And so they will remove themselves temporarily from the appointment list. And it's more about, it's not so much only about pay now, it's more about capacity. And so county court, and Becky can talk about this, county court makes it pretty easy for the attorneys to get on, to temporarily come off a list and do what they need to do if they're feeling overwhelmed. District Court, has more folks on our homicide and felony list than previously. We are up to 12 from 7 attorneys, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is moving in the right direction. And a well-respected defense attorney I spoke with told me that they have stopped taking federal appointments. And the federal rate is $158 an hour. And they have stopped taking federal appointments because now they feel they are able to focus their practice on their Lancaster County cases. So that's a good feeling. And I've also been told that the 5th Judicial District, so Seward and Platte, I'm not sure what other counties, they are raising their rate to $125 starting July 1. So I think we can feel good that we have been in a leadership position, that other counties are now following suit, which is nice. I did put together a little table that you can see here, and this shows information I have from our payment software. It's called Defender Data. I provided that breakdown of felony appointments. So that breaks things down from 2019, 2020, 21, and 22. Overall, it looks like there's a trend that private appointments are decreasing. There were 605 in 2019, 579 in 2020, 506 in 2021, and 430 in 2022. There's some other trends also. In 2019, only 11 private attorneys were appointed for homicide and felony 1 cases. So the majority, anyway, that number has seemed to balloon over the last 4 years. And those are the cases that cost the county the most in private attorney fees. So it is our hope that the Public Defender's Office can prioritize those cases and that they have the resources to do so. And I'll have Judge Post kind of pick up from there.
Yeah, good morning. I guess the only thing I have to add in that regard is it's a welcome sight to see the public defender's budget requests reflect the desire to make those changes to try to reverse a little bit of a trend that we've seen with the higher level cases. As you would expect, when you're talking about firearm cases, homicide, that sort of thing, they cost more. And so the more the public defender has the resources to take those cases, it's probably better for everyone, including the taxpayers. So.
Any questions? Kind of.
You had said you went up from 7 to 12, is that what you said?
That's
Is
right.
that the range you want to be, need to be, or are you still looking for more?
We
What
are
is that?
still looking for more, but we want qualified
Mhm.
folks handling those higher level felonies. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's not just getting applications. We need to consider the ability of the attorneys to handle a certain level of case. As I was alluding to earlier, we know that there are public defenders that can handle those higher level cases. And we have private attorneys that can do so, but handling a possession of methamphetamine case is not the same as a homicide. And so we need to make sure that we're comfortable with defense counsel when we're appointing them. And so I'm sure many attorneys would like to get paid the higher rate, but we also have to weigh that against, you know, ability to take on those cases. So, and they take a lot of time. There was a case last year where I know the private attorney spent the vast majority of their practice on one case. And so asking them to do that and put everything else aside is a big ask. So.
Can you give me those numbers one more time?
Yeah.
What was the rate, what is the rate? You also cited the SARPI rate and the federal rate. Can you just give me those numbers?
Yeah, no problem. So as long as I can remember them. I should under promise and over
We're
deliver.
in the same boat there.
So, until last July, we were at 75 per hour. And Sarby, we went to 125 an hour and then 175 for homicides. And I believe Sarby County, Lancaster and Sarby County are the only two counties in the state that have those rates. And the federal rate for non-capital punishment is 158. There's a higher rate for capital punishment in the federal court system. And is there more? Okay.
What does Douglas do?
I mean, I don't think we want to compare ourselves to Douglas, but they.
Rarely do we want to go there, but
80, I think, and 60 in some cases, and that is delicate, I guess. To they have more. I don't know how to say it. They have more attorneys, I guess, to draw from.
I think the simplest answer to that is something that happens on a weekly basis at least is I need to find an attorney to appoint, right? I would like them to take the call and be interested in taking the appointment instead of considering whether they can pay for it or if they're going to lose money if they take the appointment. We shouldn't really expect them to lose money taking our cases, so.
Anything else I can answer about court appointments?
I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that it great work.
Seriously, I was surprised.
Mhm.
You know, I think we all sort of had our hair on fire about this issue,
yes, we did.
and and thankfully, you know, I don't. And Becky can talk about this when she comes up to talk. You know, who knows what's going to happen the next 6 months? We have some high-profile cases coming up that will be tried before the end of the budget year, and so there might be an uptick, but we're on track with 6 months projections. So thank you for your
Good
time.
leadership on this, Amanda, and Judge Post as well. Thanks for coming out to share with us.
Commissioner. All right.
Thank you very much.
Short and
Thank
sweet.
you.
Thank you.
All right, Becky, come on up.
I don't think I can add a whole lot to what Amanda already shared. These two are well within budget for the first half of the year. Caseload was roughly the same as far as those that we had to point for. The average cost per case overall was up about $100. Do I think the second half of the budget year will go as well? No, because we're going to see more of the cases that are paid at the higher rate. But I still feel we're going to be well within budget. Which, again, Dennis has talked about that before too. There's no science for being able to determine what the best budget number is. Gained 4 new attorneys and 4 older ones that had not been appointed in a while, or hadn't been on the list in a while, came back on, but as Amanda said, go all the time with how many cases they actually have. They email us and say, can I take a break for 3 months?
Questions?
Okay?
Hey, thank you very much.
So, I'd also had asked Teresa from juvenile court to be over. She had emailed me this morning. They had a couple sick individuals in their office, so she couldn't slide over here. But she's been sending me updates on kind of the number of attorneys, and it looks like this last quarter that juvenile court's got about 41 current attorneys that they use, and it basically looked like they added 6 but deleted 6. So 41's kind of about where they're at. Now, you know, when we look at the numbers, you know, juvenile court tends to be the largest dollar-wise, and they're on pace right now, also to be below it. So I guess we'll just kind of, you know, we'll finish out the year, you know, and we go into next budget year, we'll have the discussion again. But I think when I talked earlier about how we had forced down a few numbers and was going to wait and see how it was going to happen, what was going to happen this year, this was one of them. We almost hit each one of them and reduced by like 200,000, and right now we're still under that. So, so far, we don't have any issues there. But I think it's just going to be a topic of discussion as we keep moving forward. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at on court-appointed attorneys. Any questions for me at all? Okay, let's then have Pam come up and we'll talk county engineer stuff.
Do we have a report?
There is not.
Yeah, I got it for you. No, why? Hold on. Leslie, I'm just gonna switch to the overhead since this isn't acknowledging my machine. As I always state, here is my contact information at County Engineer's Office. We wanted to start off today by talking a little bit about where the market's at, and as I have spoke to you several times about the inflation and our concerns, we're really seeing concrete products at an increase of over 14%, and pre-stressed concrete at an increase of 32%. I had a constituent point out to me last night when I said that there is a concrete shortage. He said, well, there's not really a concrete shortage, there's a cement shortage.
Yes.
And so you may or may not be aware that one of the byproducts of coal, of burning coal, is it creates a component that goes into concrete. Ash Grove actually ran out of that component last year, and so that was unfortunate. You know, if we're out of concrete, there's not a lot we can do. This is dramatically affecting the construction of our products, and so in our estimates. So in particular, when we look at our bridges and our box culverts, this year we're looking at S180
When I presented the budget to you last May, we talked about $580,000 for S-180. When we finalized the budget, we increased to account for inflation, and we increased that to about $775. The engineer's estimate for it is currently $1.4 million. The same with R-184. It's just a smidge less. The estimate for that is now a little over $1.2 million. And then E38, the slab bridge, also known as the Malcolm Bridge, that's just north of their ball fields and their wastewater treatment plant, is looking like 1.2 million. And when I talk about these numbers, of course, are estimates. Hey, we may get lucky. I don't know as though we're gonna get lucky, like 775,000 lucky. It would be a great day. I wouldn't, you know, I mean, if that's the gift that we could get in 2023, I'd call it good. That being said, you know, our budget doesn't have a flex to flex this much. We have a few places where we could squeeze. How this is probably gonna end up looking is bridge R-184 is gonna have to be pushed to next year's budget. R-184 is on Roca Road also. Of the three bridges, is the bridge that is not closed. I just wanna be totally transparent in this discussion with you, because I think we can get a little bit of a price break by bidding these two bridges together, S-180 and R-184, because they're both 4-barrel box culverts. They're 12 by 12 box each. It's a quad 12 by 12. That always kind of snags me. So there's definitely some efficiencies having the same contractor on the job, but I think that what we're going to have to do is not encumber the construction dollars for R-184 and go ahead and put that the payment of that in next year's budget. And I just, again, I think it's good to talk about these things before they happen and to be completely transparent about it. What are we really looking at for the structures budget for this year alone? We're looking at a total increase of 1.3, really kind of leaning towards $1.4 million, and that is one of my concerns. So the other project that I want to talk to you about is North 98th Street from Adams to Holdridge. It was brought to our attention by Tom Kubert that this area of the county is now sewerable. So that means that the value of the land in the corridor has gone up dramatically. We're looking at 32 separate tracts of land across the mile, and the increased cost of that is about $425,000.
What changed? They just finally built sewer lines out to that to a
Yeah,
point?
once it's sewerable, the ground is worth more.
No, yeah, I get that,
Commissioner?
yeah.
Yeah, so.
They just finally built it there.
Right. The other thing that has impacted this project dramatically is from the exhibit. You can see this is the park ground. This park ground was paid for with federal dollars by the city of Lincoln. That means that we'd have to negotiate with the federal government for right-of-way, similar to what we did on Bridge F88. So the commissioners are aware. These are difficult negotiations and processes. That process took about 4 years. And I don't think that we have 4 years in this corridor. What does that mean? Well, it's not great news. It means we're gonna have to take the alignment of that road, and for the north half mile, we're gonna have to shift it over, and we're gonna have to impact the residents that live on the west side of the road. There's some trees, some things that are gonna have to come down because, I don't know. I mean, I don't wanna say that we never have good days at county engineering, but we have a lot of challenging days. We also recently have been informed that the northern long-eared brown bat has been declared endangered, and that we will not be able to, or it will be extraordinarily difficult to remove trees after April 1st. Very difficult. And of course, the north end, I mean, these these property owners have planted rows of trees to shield their property from the road, for years. We're gonna try to get a right of entry to come in and remove these trees. Their trees are big enough that we will not be able to remove them with, county equipment. But again, that being said, that's provided that the residents give us a right of entry. I think right-of-way negotiations for this corridor, have become much more difficult than we had anticipated, had we been able to put the road right down the existing center line. I wanted to talk a little bit about our ARPA pipes. As you recall, that was $2.5 million. I actually think if I look at Michaela's spreadsheet, I've given myself an extra 10,000 there. I actually think it's 2.49. Either way, same sort of thing as the discussion on the pipes. Although we did run our first set of pipes through the commissioners a few weeks ago, and that particular set, we ended up getting $100,000 under the engineering estimate. That was probably the first engineering estimate that we were under in the last 18 to 24 months. Where do we think we're at now? We divided this up into 2,500, not 2,500, we divided this up into 4 sections with 15 pipes in each section of the county. We went out to private engineers to design this for us. We really think that we're somewhere of what we can construct with this these funds, somewhere between maybe like 2.5 phases or 2.8 phases before we don't have enough money to finish this. We estimate that we're going to need another 1.15 in additional funds to complete the construction for whatever the remainder of phase 3 is, for all of phase 4, and for additional right-of-way purchases. Now, here's the thing. That's not, it's not awesome, but I think there are some things as this project moves forward that are good. We have, as you're aware, a large number of federal aid projects we're trying to design in-house that are using a lot of our engineering time, and we really need to start working on those as our dedicated mission. So as we shift, should we run out of funds for this project, we'll just go ahead and put these pipes out to bid next fall because we have the design and we're ready to go. So, of course, if anyone ends up not using their $1 million of ARPA money, I just also want you to be aware that this is a fine insurance policy that will enable us to get across the finish line. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the new grading crew and where we've been with the new grading crew. So staffing takes a while. So once I was approved to add that grading crew on, it took us about 8 weeks to add the first 2 employees, and then it took us about 4 months to get the other 2 employees in place. So we've really only fully had that grading crew in place for about 8 weeks. We still have not had the semi that we bought last April or March delivered to the county yet. We're hoping that will be delivered before the end of this budget year. So we're also a little short equipment. What does that mean? Well, it means that we have worked on a number of projects just in the last 8 weeks. I do think it's going to be successful. We've worked on 11 structure projects. We've worked on 2 other regrading projects. We've done 2 large tree removal projects, and by the way, with the new status of the long-eared brown bat, we're out there, and I'm sad to say this because I am a lover of the trees, we're out there slaying the trees. If there's a tree that's in an easement that we own or we can get a right of entry while we're in negotiations, we're clearing those right now. And then lastly, this crew really was instrumental in helping us with the fire cleanup. And I think that was kind of something we hadn't talked about, but it definitely helped out with the resilience of our cleanup in the emergency event. So what does one of those projects looks like? Well, here is one that does happen to be in the fire corridor, and you can see this particular box culvert had a lot of materials in front of the opening of it. That means that they don't flow right, they don't behave right. So we went in, we regraded that, so you can see we have a picture of each side of the box culvert, and we have another picture of each side of the box culvert after the channel's been cleaned up and regraded. And these projects are substantial and instrumental to the long-term maintenance and preservation of our system. Doing projects like this is definitely an investment in our future. Lastly, I would like to say about this in particular, we're tracking a number of things, and we're trying to track it in Oracle. You may or may not recall that was one of the things that I said with Oracle. We really need to have the ability to track our project, by task. Oracle is super awkward and clumsy at that, and that was kind of a last minute thing then that got added in the Oracle project. We really find that our staff has to keep double records, because even if you input into Oracle, you might log into it the next day and your time is all gone, which is super frustrating, and it's just been really difficult to work with. So if it's the commissioner's long-term goal to track the exact labor savings of the new crew, then we're gonna need some additional tools in the toolbox to do that. And I just wanna be really upfront about that.
That's real quick. When you say additional tools in the toolbox, are you talking about fixing Oracle, or are you talking about something new?
Hey, so just so you know, Commissioner Schulte, I have a lot of issues just with infrastructure. So, I mean, I understand that there's some Oracle, there's another study going on, and I am open to whatever it is. We just need a better solution to track our time. And I think that here's the reality. If we have the system to track our time by task, we also have the ability to improve and continuously improve on what those results are. Sadly, we don't have the tool to do that right now, other than to take everybody's timesheet and input it into a spreadsheet every week. And that's not really a good solution, especially for the size of operation that we are.
Thanks.
In closing, just a quick note. I know last year we came to the commissioners and we said, hey, we have some money that we can defer maintenance on if we transfer that from the highway fund to the bridge fund to finish projects. I just wanted to note that we do believe we're gonna need to transfer approximately $500,000 from the highway fund to the bridge fund this year. And then as you total through, you may notice that, hey, not only would we accept additional support for the ARPA pipes, but if there was some more money, in particular about $1.3, $1.4 million, that would help us add that other bridge back into the system. I know there's probably not any more money, but I think we should talk about what it is, because I do think it's important to get both of those bridges off. So 2 solutions to that: either we find more money so that we can build that other bridge, or we bid that bridge this spring and we don't encumber the money and we put it in next year's budget.
Can you
So
send us
Pam-
these slides?
Yeah,
Because I can't read.
We don't have this.
we can barely see it since you can't enlarge it there, so.
I'm sorry the laptop didn't work today.
Yeah.
Just email them to us.
Yeah, sure.
So Pam, let me just make sure that I understand. So on the amending of the budget, what you're saying is we will need to amend the road and bridge fund this year by that 500,000, is that what?
Well, I guess, Dennis, you and I have typically in the past done a, for lack of a better term, a wait and see. I don't want to wait and see until like the second week in May, because that
Right.
makes me nervous.
I get it.
But the good news is Bridge E38, we have the plans. I met with the Village of Melcombe last night. We're ready to go out to bid with that project. The other two bridges, if we don't have final plans, we'll have final plans very shortly, so that we can go ahead and get those out to bid too. You know, I really hate to start moving around money. If, like I said, maybe for some reason become extraordinarily lucky. But I do think that, as an engineer, I don't really like surprises, so I don't necessarily want to come to the commissioners with surprises.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same
Yeah.
page with you,
But I do
knowing,
think in order to get, even if we cut one bridge, I think we still need the $500,000 to transfer from the highway fund,
okay,
based on our best current available data.
okay.
Yeah.
That way I kind of have an idea too, if we got to start thinking about when we have to amend and do all that, so,
And I will keep you up to date as those bids come in.
perfect. Okay, any other questions for Pam? All right, thanks, Pam.
Pam?
Yep.
All right, next item we're gonna talk about is the ARPA update. So, let's see here. Michaela, you can kind of, if you wanna come over here and drive whatever you want to drive.
Yep. Right.
So we do have a link out there under Michaela's topic that will take you to the ARPA stuff on the budget and fiscal website.
And that information is updated quarterly. So after every quarterly report, I update it and add the report to the website so that anyone can get to it at any time. So this quarter marks that we have spent $10,316,000, a little over that. So we're moving along compared to last year. All the contracts and stuff are in place. So what I'm finding this year is that I'm moving things around between revenue replacement and non-revenue replacement. So like as Pam said, her culvert says 2.49 million. Well, I had moved 10,000 of that down to revenue replacement because they have done some in-house work. And so that pays for some of that payroll in there. And if you can look at the revenue replacement, we're not using the full 10 million. And I want to make sure that we are using the full 10 million. So as things like that come up, I make adjustments like that. As far as everything else, I think that we're moving along well, reaching out to some of the nonprofits. Some of them haven't spent some of their money, but a lot of them are. One of them I had to reach out and just say, just a reminder, you have, X amount of dollars that have to be spent by, and so I'm starting to see a lot more of those bills come in too. So, rural water district, they have purchased land, so,
Good.
so they, and I've gotten the plans all over to engineering for them. So their first bill for their contract JEO, that's come through since this last quarter. So we are seeing things moving forward.
So Michaela, how many contracts do we not have?
Well,
Because under the obligated, you're mostly reporting stuff that we've got contracts for, correct?
so we have for Lancaster County Community Corrections, Kim has been working with Region 5 very closely, and they have just had their RFP approved by DBH, which is it's kind of a long process. So very good that they've already got that going. So once that RFP gets through, then we should start seeing contracts for that. The social detox, I know that the RFPs for building that are going through and getting responses, so we should be seeing contracts for that one. We do have some funds unallocated, like a small amount. I think we have, it's 81,000 right now. And then the Indian Center, we have a contract with them already, and they are RFPing for whoever's going to come and start doing their projects that we have approved and put in contract with them. So not a lot is out there. And then for the youth project with Sarah, we met with DBH yesterday and discussed the program plan and are developing that. And once they approve the program plan, then the RFP will go. So.
Great.
I think you meant, did you mention the social detox? Maybe you called that something else.
No, social detox. Yeah, so that is going out for RFP right now.
That's one, okay.
Yep.
Gotcha, thanks.
Any other questions?
Looks good.
Progress.
We're chugging along.
Yeah, so we've also got out on the website the last quarterly report that Michaela just completed yesterday or the day before.
31st.
Yeah, 31st.
Yep.
So, so that's just kind of so that you can kind of see those. Also, it's just kind of reporting all of this stuff.
We also didn't know if this is helpful enough. Do you guys need a further breakouts? Like I didn't know if, like for the nonprofits, for example, if that's something that you guys would like to see on the website as well on how we're doing with that. Or if you get a lot of questions about that and it would be easy just to access it through the website.
I've not really gotten too many questions
No,
on
I
the.
haven't
on the
heard
At all,
nonprofits.
Okay.
which is
Not
surprising.
opposed to it, but I just,
Yeah.
realistically, no one's
I don't know
talking
if
about
it's
it.
necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be unnecessary.
Okay. Well, if you ever do need anything that you think would be valuable to this website, just let us know. Okay.
We've got your phone.
Because one other thing that I'll just remind you is, you know, we're kind of in that last year before everything's got to be obligated. So by December 31st, I don't know, 2024. So we actually have 2 years.
Has
Okay.
to be obligated by then and spent by.
2026.
2026.
So,
December
Pretty
31st,
well on track for
2024.
that.
yeah, we're in good
We're
shape with the way things are now. The big question, of course, is the airport. And that,
Right, and at this point in time, we haven't really heard or seen anything from that side to really say that anything's coming at this point.
right?
You know, I keep hearing stuff about maybe different flights and stuff maybe coming, but that's just kind of hearsay.
They haven't contacted you definitely for the money.
Nope.
They've been teasing it out there for like 6 months or something now, but yeah, nothing's shown up. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to start hearing from some of the departments, and in these department responses, we'll talk about not only current year stuff but also next year stuff. I'll have them just come up and kind of talk about both so that you can kind of take that into effect. So what I'm going to pull up here is the department responses. So we will start on really page 5, and I'll have Derek come up here first. And really at this point, you know, we'll kind of just kind of go over things, but like I said, some of it will affect this year, some of it will affect future years. So Derek, I'll kind of turn it over to you and let you kind of talk about what's happening over there in the assessors.
Yeah, Derek Niederklein with the Assessor's Office. Here on behalf of Dan Nolte and Corey Beatty, who typically handle this function. For the mid-year budget review, it looks like things are generally on track. Some of the unexpected items are covered by other unexpected items, like the departure of the assessor and the deputy, both of whom are long-term employees. There's a notable payout for the PEP, et cetera. We've also had some departures of other employees that we haven't filled those positions pending the new administration getting up and running. So we think those two things will offset. As far as revenues, our revenue source is fees from the filing of deeds by way of the documentary stamp tax. Those recordings are down, particularly because people are not refinancing when interest rates are climbing. So we're taking in less documents for that. So that's going to create a little bit of a shortfall in the tech fund, but we don't think that's much, and we think we can cover it with other items, other room in our budget. In terms of future items, we're looking at updating a field software program and the hardware that goes along with it. We're still in the early stages of reviewing that, but that was really the only thing that was notable that could be discussed into the future year.
Okay. Yeah, so the only thing that I'll add is when Derek mentioned the tech fund, you know, part of those fees that they collect also go into the tech fund. So not only does it reduce what's coming to the county overall, it's also reducing what goes into that kind of tech fund. So we'll just have to, I think for the most part, when I see the expenditures out of there, mostly we're covering probably software.
Yes.
Costs is what we are. So once that tech fund does decrease or anything like that, then we'd have to just understand we got to pick it up out of their regular budget. Okay? So any other questions for Derek?
Like offsetting things. I mean, that's always a good one when it works out.
So Derek, staff-wise right now, how many positions aren't filled?
I believe there's four that aren't filled. And because of the specialized nature of our work, if we lose, like particularly an appraiser, we won't rush out and fill it right away. We'll typically, it depends on the time of year, and our pattern has been to hire a few at a time. It helps with training, and we really have to hire them at a particular time of the year. So that's part of the reason why those are still vacant.
Okay.
On the software that you mentioned here, is this a software or hardware that's already been selected, or this is like maybe sometime we think this is about what it's going to cost?
Yeah, so we have a software that already with our computer-assisted mass appraisal program, and it's largely deficient, and it's causing us additional work. And so we've explored alternatives. We've not selected anyone, but we're pleased to know that there are a couple of good alternatives out there.
Okay. So is that total cost that you just put in here, that's just the actual cost of the software and hardware? That's not like an ongoing contract or a setup contract?
Correct.
Like that?
Yeah, it's hardware, the first year of software, and then there would be like an ongoing maintenance fee that would be substantially less than that figure.
Sure. Okay.
So Derek, one more question for me. Can you give us kind of an update on preliminary hearings? You know,
Sure.
because have those started?
Yeah, we've we opened up the ability to schedule online appeals about January 15th. The statute says that owners can choose to have a face-to-face or a phone hearing up until February 1st, which was yesterday. So we closed that down, and we had just about 5,000 requests, and so which we can accommodate that number. We're also going to leave open the ability for property owners to submit information to our attention. We'll never turn away information, and we'll keep reviewing it until the clock runs out on March 25th, which is another statutory deadline.
Okay. So 5,000, kind of what you expected?
Yeah, we always prepare for more. We prepared for 10,000.
Okay.
In 2019, we had 7,200. The size of the increase was less, but that was the largest appeal number, I think, on record. So yeah, we're 5,000 is still a pretty good load, and we know we'll continue to get more information over the next month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anything? Okay, thanks, Derek.
All right.
Okay, so I will now invite Stephen up.
What page?
And I've tried to kind of keep these in order on the responses. So this is
Oh, here we go.
probably page 6 is where I've kind of started at. Stephen, let me see if I can, because you had sent. You need this. There's a couple of things. You had sent that item yesterday, so I'm gonna.
So are we looking at the email that we
Yeah,
had
the
got,
email
that's
that,
front desk lobby officer post?
Well, I wasn't gonna do that
Oh,
first. We were gonna do our mid-year update, just so you guys know where we're
yeah,
at.
I'll just get these pulled up.
Thank you.
So this is that, and then for now, you want to start right there?
Yeah, we'll start.
Okay.
Go ahead. Well, good morning, everyone. Just to give you an overview of where we are at mid-year expenditures, even with cost of living and some pop-up expenses that we had so far this year that we brought forward previously, we're still expected to be on point. So we are not requesting any additional funds. As of the mid-year review, I was anticipating getting between $300,000 and $500,000 over for our revenues. So we're having really a pretty good year. We have 2 items that we were coming here to discuss today. We were asked to come to talk about the reallocations of 2 positions. That request for this fiscal year, we are not requesting additional funds for that. And then I've got the numbers for what that cost would be potentially in the next year. And then Steve is here to talk about a request for 2 new FTEs. I'll leave it at that.
The increased revenue, Melissa, that's due to high probation numbers then? Is that what's driving the increased revenue?
Large in part, our population. Our population is much higher. If you look at that chart at the top, on our letter, oh, it's not on the screen right now. We are serving a lot more kids than what we anticipated. Now, the trick with that and with revenues is we're also serving a lot of higher kids with more serious charges that are in adult court, and those are not considered into the revenue. That they're not. Those are Lancaster County responsible youth. So those numbers have unfortunately also gone up. But overall, we're still serving a higher number of youth for probation is primarily the result.
And our length of stays have increased, so.
Well, that would go with the adult charges. I mean, that would be more.
Primarily, but we do have some challenging kids to find placements for. So we have some kids who have lingered for longer because they're just challenging the place. So probation has difficulties finding placements.
Gotcha. So the bottom line is for mid-year budget, expenses have been on track, revenue is up.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why we're not requesting any additional funds for the cost of living. We've had some vacancies throughout the beginning of the part of the year that have been able to help cover those costs. So that's what I mean when I say right now in this year, the reallocation piece that's in there, that's not an addition. I'm not asking for any funding for that this fiscal year, if that is approved.
Oh, okay.
Ready to move on?
Okay. I had sent a long email to Dave a couple of weeks ago. And basically what it is that the facility, as you know, is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week detention facility. And currently, and for some time now, there's no controlled entry point or access point. And what I mean by that is that the lobby is a wide open lobby, the entrance to the facility. And there's a secondary door, the Lincoln 8 Alpha door, that's just off of the employee lounge area that historically has been used for entry and egress also. So you're talking about a correctional facility that has 2 ways in and 2 ways out, and neither one of them are controlled. So that's where the problem is. So I took a look at our current staffing numbers and our current posts, and there's no way that we can post or create a front lobby post, without asking for an additional FTE for that post. I'm proposing a 5-day-a-week post, 2 shifts a day. So morning shift and evening shift. The graveyard shift, we would just lock the doors and they'd have to have control, allow them to get in, and so forth. Currently, by not having a controlled access point, first of all, we don't know who's coming in and out. We don't search staff, visitors, or anyone else when they come in. In the correctional world, there are 3 main ways of introducing contraband into a facility: visitation, mail, and unfortunately staff. So 2 out of those 3 ways come through our front doors. Visitation comes through front door, and obviously staff partially comes through the front door because we have another door that's being used. So I looked at, well, first of all, I spoke to Brad Johnson and asked him about his lobby operation. And then I also used the same NIC formula to determine how many staff we would need to be able to have a post there, a permanent post, for those 5 days a week, 2 shifts a day. And that's what you're seeing up there. And below that, Melissa broke down the costs. So using a relief factor, which actually rounded down, to man that post would take 2.3173 FTEs. And that includes, it's a post that requires relief, so we have to be cognizant of days off, sick time, vacation, training, and things of that nature. So utilizing the NIC staff analysis formula, that's what it is. The pros, naturally, is it's a necessary layer of security. It's an industry standard. Correctional facilities have controlled entry points where we can monitor who's coming in, what's coming in. It provides an accounting of all who enter the facility, ensures, as I've said several times, a controlled entry point, ensures individuals with no official business in the facility can't just walk into the facility. And it provides a funnel, if you will, for contraband detection and interdiction. And it's a safety, it's a safety issue. It's been like that since I've arrived. I've noticed it before, but to be quite honest with you guys, these recent upticks in mass shootings, people walking into businesses, it got my attention again. So it's not something that we just woke up one morning and said, oh, we should have this there. We should have had it there, but I just think that the necessity coupled with everything else that's been going on, I don't think we need to sit on it any further. We need to do something about it, and I just don't have the capacity in my current staffing and our staffing plan to do it.
Would there be any facility updates that would need to happen to make this, because this is just addressing the staffing costs? I'd imagine there'd need to be some physical changes as well. Is that true?
Not to the physical plant. We currently have a magnetometer that's not being used correctly. So we have a magnetometer. And we also have handheld wands. So as far as tearing down walls and things of that nature, no.
And I also just want to clarify, I mean, you say it's uncontrolled, but nobody can just walk into where the
Yes, they
students
can.
are.
Yes.
Nobody
Can walk into where?
where the detainees, the students are, the youth.
No, they can't get back there.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. But they can access where other staff work.
Okay.
They can access where other staff work, and it's more than just that. We need to make sure that no one is coming in with a cell phone. No one's coming in with a vape pen. No one's coming in with items that are contraband that could get into the hands of the youth. And right now, there's no mechanism to ensure that. Staff know they're not supposed to. We have policies that talk about allowable items and what's contraband, but if there's no one there to check that, to ensure that no one's coming in, even if it's an honest mistake. Oh, I forgot I had my cell phone in my pocket and I make it all the way in the back, and some kind of way they leave it on a desk or something and the kid gets it. But we have no mechanism to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Is this is totally a little bit off the subject, but I'm just curious. Are Apple Watches, smart watches, is that considered the same level as a phone, or is that more like
No,
something that's
it would be. My past experience in policy that we've had as far as allowable items, smartwatches were not allowed.
Yeah. And then you mentioned visitation as well. Is visitation open now where parents can come in and visit their kids?
We're almost there.
Okay.
We're almost there. I spoke with Greg earlier this week. We've almost got our plan together for reintroducing contact visits. Virtual visits are still taking place.
So my question is, does this get you enough coverage? First off, what would the traffic volume be like? Would this person have downtime when they can be doing other things that are administrative to support?
Yes.
While they would be sitting there essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, and then does this get you enough coverage?
According to the formula, according to the staffing analysis, that's what we would need, 2.3. I don't know how we third a body, but 2.3 FTEs because it rounds down, so.
So let me ask a question. Okay, can you just walk through the process? Okay, so someone comes, if you have a person at the front desk and people come in, how do you do drug interdiction, search, and so forth? What are the policies that you would follow? Just please outline that for me.
Oh, sure. Okay, the first things first, we would move the magnetometer from where it currently is to another location. The doors would be locked.
The front doors?
The front doors, correct. So that officer that's on post, you come through that first door, you would have to be given or granted entry into the second door. Okay? Once you're in that second door, you would, like any place else, you empty your pockets. We'd have little bins. You empty all your pockets out, turn your pockets inside out, that type of thing. You'd go through the magnetometer. Once you go through the magnetometer, then you would still get a wand. If the wand hits on certain areas, like if it hits on that pocket again, then we're going to inspect that pocket even further. We have lockers in the lobby, so if folks have keys and cell phones and things of that nature, then they would be directed and they would be put in there. Or we can introduce a chit system where the visitor is given a chit and their property stays behind the desk in a secured bag, and then once they leave, they return the chit and then they get their property back. And the same thing for staff. The staff would go through the exact same thing. Lunch bags would be inspected a little more than they are now because they're not being inspected at all. Staff are not supposed to take their lunch bags to the back. They have the locker room is right up front. So those kinds of, some of the systems that are already in place, we can ensure that they're adhered to and that they're enforced. But as far as the physical searching that I talked about, that's how we would do that. They'd come through a magnetometer, they'd be hand wanded, their pockets would be emptied and turned inside out, any bags or whatever would be inspected. So that's what that process would look like.
What contraband problems have you had lately?
Lately, vape pens.
What?
Vape pens, they seem to be the big one. At least one instance of medication. But knock on wood, we haven't had any Class A weapons or anything like that. It's generally vape pens. We haven't had any cell phones. Again, knock on wood. But pretty much that. And that's through intake. That's what I would like to think, that something gets missed in a police handoff search.
Right.
I don't want to think that a staff member is bringing in a vape pen.
Sure.
But it's a possibility. We don't know.
With the medication, was it in, do we know, was it prescribed to that individual? Was
We
it-
don't.
Okay. It was just loose
Yeah.
pills or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we don't. And then other because we've increased our searches, so
Right.
nuisance contraband, we're finding in kids' rooms and things of that nature, but not any serious contraband other than those items. It's just the thought of just having free and open access into the lobby of a correctional facility is not a good practice.
What's the number, the traffic count, you might say, through those doors?
I honestly can't say. I honestly can't say. I could say for shift changes as far as staff is concerned,
yeah.
but throughout the day, I don't know. And we have a sign-in sheet at the front, but no one's really policing it. There's no one there to ensure, sir, ma'am, please sign in, please sign out when you leave, things of that nature. So we don't know.
And honestly, part of that is because a section of our building is being operated by the state of
By
Nebraska.
the
So,
state, right.
and we do not have those specific numbers, so that's part of why that is hard to
Would you
say.
be doing the same inspections for the YARTC folks?
Absolutely, because that's the entry point. Anyone who enters into the facility is subjected to that.
One time there was talk of having YRTC Lincoln have their own entry point, that door off of the staff lounge area.
They use that as their,
Yeah, okay, so they are doing that.
yes.
So
Yeah.
this job couldn't control that point, because
Yeah.
that's a separate point that goes through sort of the admin area.
Correct.
So,
So I'll give you an example. If we had a fire and we had to evacuate the building, right? Procedures are you're supposed to all muster, if you will, in front of the staff-wise, in front of the building and get a head count so that we can make sure that none of our people are still inside. I have no clue how many people YRTC may have in today, if they have any visitors, if they have training, because they come and go through that back door. Now, some of our staff utilize that door too. So
But I'm saying this position couldn't solve that problem.
It would solve that problem, because that door would become an emergency egress door only. And from control, we can lock it so that the keypad doesn't work. So they would not be able to get out unless it's overridden by control. And then the new directive would be, starting on such and such date, this is the way into the building, this is the way out of the building, everyone has to be searched, so on and so on and so on.
We do that, I mean, without the search part, we could do that now, though.
We
That-
could correct, we could shut that door down now and funnel everybody to the front, but the only thing we're doing is we're moving the problem from 2 doors to 1 door, because we still wouldn't have someone there to search.
Right, I'm just saying, these are 2 independent problems. YRTC, us not having the numbers on YRTC for a fire or tornado or whatever, that's a separate issue necessarily than it. Right. Especially if we're, like, I know where that other door is. That position couldn't watch both doors simultaneously. So if we're sending someone through, also, don't we have requirements that they, like, our kids and their kids can't run into each other? I mean, it would have to be.
It has nothing to do with the kids, if I'm understanding what you're, I don't know if I'm understanding what you're asking.
I thought the reason they were using that side door was specifically so that the populations never encountered each other.
No, that's not, kids don't enter that door. Their kids enter through the same intake area that our kids enter. They utilize the same intake area. Yeah. That door is strictly a door that's used by staff. It's right off of the staff break room.
I think there was talk, it must never have happened, I think there was talk back when this whole thing started with YRTC about actually taking that staff door and turning it into an intake area and actually using it for intake for them. That obviously never happened.
No,
That's
no,
fine.
It's a break room with staff bathrooms. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a real problem, it seems.
So that would be staff 24 hours a day, 5 days a week.
No,
Not
ma'am, just 2
24.
shifts.
Just 2 shifts.
2 out of the 3.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
What?
2 shifts, 5 days a week,
2 shifts, 5 days a week.
Then
when the most traffic comes through.
Okay, 16 hours.
And then otherwise it'd be handled by staff that's already there?
Control.
Yeah.
Yeah. The front doors would be locked. And let's say at 2 o'clock in the morning, for whatever
Right,
reason,
there's-
then control, hit the intercom, who are you? And then they could send
Uh-huh.
a supervisor up
Yeah.
to allow them to come in.
That answers my question about, is this enough? Because I was thinking it wasn't enough hours.
If we did a comparison, if we asked for 7 days a week coverage, then it increased it by, I want to say an FTE 1.3 or some change. So then we would be up to 3.5.
when would you like to start this, Stephen?
6 months ago. But
I say yeah for that. Yeah. Well, I would like some time to, I don't feel like I'm ready to make a decision today.
Yeah,
I would
no,
like to
no,
weigh
I think-
this out. I think your recognition of the safety issues that are involved with both protecting the staff, the kids, everybody involved are valid. Just not ready to
Yeah.
commit to this kind of expenditure.
And actually, I'd like to see what the other departments have too.
That's kind of my feeling, is I want to see our whole day
I wanna
before
see the whole
we make
day.
a decision, but this does seem extremely important.
It feels like some steps may be able to be taken towards this. I mean, if we want to cut off one entry point, then that means everybody's coming through the front, but it still doesn't do
There's no
the
supervision.
searching and the scanning that you're proposing with the addition. So,
it just shifts. It just kind of shifts it around.
traffic flow.
Yeah, and it doesn't create a controlled access, and that's what I'm attempting to do, create a controlled access. That's monitored.
Yeah.
And I guess I do have another question too, because, you know, as you mentioned, dangerous people can enter. And so how do you propose that the front desk person is protected?
Well, that was brought up in one of my group meetings with and Greg Horry, he brought up that question. Nothing can guarantee against it, but the way that my brain works is, if I'm posted at that front desk and the door is locked, I can see if someone and make an assessment as to whether or not the person seems to be agitated before they get in, and I don't have to let them in. Currently, we don't know who's coming in and whether they're agitated or who's in the lobby. So is it 100% foolproof? No, but it's a whole heck of a lot safer than it currently is. And it at least gives the officer an opportunity to see who's coming. Once they get in there, he can do a physical scan of the person. He or she may or may not be able to notice if they're carrying something they shouldn't be carrying, but at least we have that opportunity.
Is there a camera on the front door?
Yes.
Couldn't central control do the same thing?
Central control, you know as well as I do.
Yeah,
Central control.
I've worked every post we're talking
Yeah.
about.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. They have it up,
Yeah.
but they're not able to monitor it.
Right. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. All right, let's just call it what it is. I got stuck at front desk for 6 months. Worst 6 months of my life. Sat there doing this
That's, yeah.
Sometimes.
for 7 hours out of
That's why
out
I'm
of
asking
8.
if there's
So,
other duties that person could be doing
Yeah,
while
it
they're
just-
there that would provide some other
like,
relief.
I'm not saying that there's not important moments, and let's face it, that's what a lot of security work is too. There's when things are going well, there is a lot of downtime, and that's okay.
Right.
It's just if there were other ways to solve this problem, I'd be interested in looking at it. So.
Let us mull this over a little bit and see if we have any questions or follow up on it.
Definitely thank you for identifying that problem though, because that seems like a real issue.
Was there another issue that Melissa was alluding to, or was it just this was the one you wanted to talk about?
This in the reclassification.
Yeah, the reallocations of 2 staff that we have on.
Okay.
You had mentioned that was something that was last year. Can you just give me a brief overview of what those reclassifications are?
Sure. One of them is a accounting position or administrative position, and the other one deals directly with programming with our youth. So those are the 2 positions that we're looking at reallocating. Just on the administrative or the accounting position, there was a job audit done, and recommendations under that. It was under the previous HR director because some of those have been done for about a year now, a little over a year. So the other one includes an individual that was put into a classification that does not fit what that individual's duties are, and that's where that request for reallocation came from.
You or Dennis, how much was that reclassification going to cost about? And it's okay if you need to get it to me later.
No, I think,
Yep. This year, we're able to cover that within our current budget, so I'm not asking for any money for this year.
Okay.
Next year, both positions would have still got a 3.6% bump, and I didn't figure it into the numbers that I sent down here, but it's roughly $13,000 overall.
Okay.
So, for the full fiscal year next year.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
So, given our policy of considering those twice a year, are we considering them now, or what's the?
I think we said that policy was going to begin this summer.
When we do the budget.
Yeah.
We'll reevaluate that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That's how I interpret it, yeah. Cody.
okay, so we've got Scott here. So his response is on page 10 of those department responses. So I'll just kind of let him talk about one of the items that we wanted to hear about was that nurse position that we had talked about. So I'll have Scott kind of jump into his stuff.
So overall, I'm still under budget for the first 6 months. You know, there's different varying costs and things, and I've had some unexpected things that came up, but, you know, the vast majority of costs are personnel related, and so that's a bigger factor on everything. Last spring, I can't even remember when it was, we got the approval to try to hire another registered nurse, and we went through all that. You know, it was an afternoon, evening position, and it was going to replace some of the on-call staff that we currently employ. And there was going to be a little bit of overlap in the afternoon. I think it was 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, which is 15 hours a week. It was going to, for those days of the week, it would stop overtime because the person who was leaving would already be covered at that point, and they could just leave instead of having to do the change of shift and all the things that are necessary at that point in time. And it also that we've been trying to do some different activities and groups with nursing, but it's really hasn't happened yet because the time isn't there with just the one nurse covering all the time. And so that position has not been, we have not hired for that position yet. We've had different applicants, but none that we've wanted to employ at this point.
But Scott, your thoughts are still the same on that, right?
Yes, yes, they are the same on that. And so, you know, that we were going to, you know, looking back at it, you know, we were going to employ the person, see if that had any effect on the budget overall. We were going to look at it as we went along, but we haven't even been able to do that at this point in time. And so I would still prefer to obviously do that because it provides, the extra position would provide backup coverage in emergent situations where a sick call comes in and we can't find anyone to work, and so the nursing supervisor has been pretty much covering the majority of those when we can't find anyone else available to come in, and we're not short, but we're a small group, you know, of nursing, and it is hard to find nurses in general, and also those that want to pick up extra hours at times too. So
this position was covered by the tuition reimbursement as well.
it would be, yes, it could be if someone was hired, and yes, it would be, because it would be a full-time nursing position. You know, it wasn't a full position, but it would come with benefits because it would be full-time, and it would replace some of those on-call hours for those nurses. The on-call nurses would still work in the evenings, or the weekends, I mean. The weekend, they would cover some hours, but it would give us more consistency across the board. And that is the early afternoon up through the evening is our busiest time frame for admissions and discharges and extra paperwork and things like that too. That's where we're doing the majority of that stuff.
Okay.
Overall, on the revenue side for the mid-year budget, Medicaid revenues are up. They were up last year due to expanded Medicaid. I think I increased over what was budgeted last year going into this fiscal year. I think I raised it 12% as just to see where we'd end up, and it's up 12% from what was budgeted over 6 months right now, and things. And the majority of that's been collected. You know, sometimes we have some things in arrears, but I think there's only overall from what we've billed already, I think there's 17,000 left that we're still working on trying to get collected from on the Medicaid standpoint. One of the line items on our revenues is also post-commitment under the county. It's called service development. That is down a lot from the budget this year, and the majority of the reasons why that is it's the only time we can collect it at this point in time is under non-Medicaid individuals. And so the assumption by the state and the region would be that we're still getting paid for anyone that has Medicaid services, which for the most part happens, but we don't always get coverage for every day, depending upon how long someone is at our facility. So, both psychiatric needs and the legal process both come into play to determine how long somebody stays with us and such. And so there are people that don't quite meet that criteria, but we can only bill for individuals who are indigent or don't have Medicaid. And so that number is down quite a bit from where it has been in the past. Private insurance is number C on there. We're up in private from what was budgeted. We've collected more in the first 6 months than if you just took it on a 6-month period. And that just depends upon the population we get, which we don't have any control over, and we don't have any control over if they're Medicaid eligible or have private insurance. So, that number can change also, but it is up higher than it was last year and from what we historically have budgeted. All of those having Medicaid up and the private insurance up will probably it may come out even with the not collecting as much revenue on that post commitment or service development side, and so that could come out fairly evenly overall. One other area that is changing, and it's changing some this year. And it would be changing next year also, is what's under 2D and actually the whole part of 3. And that is the alcohol evaluations that historically we have received money to perform chemical dependency evaluations, substance abuse evaluations at the crisis center, and it's been a set fee that we've received every year, and we bill for that on an ongoing basis, and so we've had money that's been there. That has been It's pretty much said that the region and the state have talked about moving to a different system, a fee-for-service system for years, and they're trying to make that happen right now in this budget cycle right now. Because we already have a contract with the region and the state, what the region is trying to do is instead of saying no, we're not going to give you that money, they're trying to shift that money under the crisis assessments to a different area that we receive funding from them. But they haven't officially been able to do that yet, and so this has been at least 4 months in the making so far, and so right now there's nothing in place to do that, and so it's been stationary. So I haven't been billing under crisis assessments, which is our line item under our revenue side for that right now, but we've just been waiting to try to, while the negotiations have been going on, to try to make that shift for those dollars and such. But that shift would come through differently in next year's budget, which would be coming up here in the next month or so for the region and such. And so that would then be a fee-for-service plan where they would like us to bill for that service under Medicaid. Some Medicaid providers would say that that's part of the rate of pay that we get for crisis stabilization under Medicaid, and so we may not be able to collect that. But other of the 3 Medicaid providers say that you can bill for that separately. So we could bill and get a Medicaid rate for that by billing separately for Medicaid for that service, and then we would also be able to bill through the state for an indigent person, again, who didn't have Medicaid for that. But that would be paid at a fee-for-service rate, which would be lower than the overall amount that we used to get as a flat fee to provide the services in the first place. I know that was long-winded, but I hope that was followed at least decently. Under next year's budget, number 1 was the change in the state contract, and that was what I just tried to detail there. This year, I do have a psychiatrist next year that will. I would think he might retire in the next fiscal year. So there will be.
I thought you were going to say you have someone.
No, psychiatrist is different than psychologist.
That's
And
true.
the psychologist did retire this year, and that was right at the beginning of this where the PEP and such went out in that regard. And I will have a supervisor who retires this year, which will be
at least a $22,000 impact on my budget. How it affects it by the end of the year, I'll have to look at also. That wasn't necessarily projected. But next year, the psychiatrist would be retiring, and that will be a large impact because he's been employed a long time, and it's a high rate of pay for the PEP that goes out in payment for that and that stuff. So that will be one impact next year. Computers, I assume that Information Services has been talking to you guys a bit about the change in Microsoft Windows and a new operating system and all that. All the computers I've been using for years have been hand-me-downs, and I've just upgraded the computers for us because the majority of what we use is just needs to be web-based and such. So there can, at some point it would be nice to look at having some upgrades with computers and whether or not any hand-me-downs will actually meet those requirements. I've been told that may not work, and so that is something that I need to start looking at, and that's probably in the, I didn't actually count them up, but probably in the upper 20s is the number that I utilize. Security camera system, we had a camera that was that had to be replaced this year, and when I went to replace it, I found that I could not upgrade to some of the newer models that were more functional because the system is the computer system is old. I think it's a Windows 7 based, so it goes back quite a ways, and so so I was going to look at getting a quote from a company to see what it would be to do that, which would be some software and hardware requirements. I wouldn't look at probably doing any other replacements that I don't think I would have to do any of the cameras, but just the server and all that stuff and some of that stuff that goes with it. So, I'll have to get a quote for that, and I'll have that for the budget process. Credible Qualifax contract, the electronic medical record, that's the system that we've been in place for the last 5 years for our electronic medical record, which gives all the data up to the state, and it has simplified a lot of our duties and things too, and been much more functional than what we were using in the past. That contract is up for renewal. It'll be due in a couple months here, and so we're in the process of reviewing that and trying to make sure that it would meet the needs. They did change the way they contracted in the past. It has been it was acquired by another company. That's the Qualifax name rather than the Credible product. And with that, they have also changed the way they contracted. And so some of the packages that they have together and that they're saying you'll have these services if you just you go with these modules here. That's what we're reviewing to see if those modules. There's some things in the product that we'll never use, and so we're trying to make sure that it meets our needs without having things that are extraneous and such. But we'll see where that goes. So that'll be coming up.
So Scott, on that, is that just a Lancaster County approval for that, or are you working with different groups?
No, in the past it was working with a lot of different groups, but it hasn't. We piggyback under a different contract, to make that happen in the first place. But it's just strictly Lancaster County.
Okay.
So yep.
Okay. Okay. Questions for Scott?
Are so good. Lots of challenges ahead.
Yeah. Lots of challenges.
It always seems as though the electronic stuff, they improve things, and then, of course, that creates cost.
It always does, doesn't it?
Does.
Yes, but it's a much easier product to use. But whether or not all the modules, they're giving us more things in some of them, but I don't know if we'll actually use them. So that's where and whether or not we can negotiate to say, hey, can we do this and that, because we're not even going to touch that. And if you want me to sign something saying we won't touch that, that's fine.
I certainly understand.
Whatever. So it is a different process. So
Saying the door locks are holding up, right?
Yeah. Oh.
the door locks are holding up. They've been tested pretty good in the last month. They've been tested pretty good, and I did remove some door locks from the old building before it was demolished years ago.
I don't know what's down.
So yeah, and we did install 2 of those, so it saved a few grand back a couple years ago. So.
There was this door lock that we just had endless. I don't know, how many years were we talking about it? I mean, we just had endless problems with this one electronic lock that just, it just seemed like a never-ending thing.
They didn't believe me when I came in and said it was finally done. We don't have to talk about it anymore.
Well, I know way more about locks than I need to know and such, so I know what locks I would never touch again.
Right.
So,
Thanks for your leadership. I look forward to coming over and meeting with
I
you
think
in a
it's
couple
March.
weeks.
Or is it early
Oh,
March?
is it March?
I
Okay.
can't remember. I was trying to remember, but yeah, I haven't looked at my calendar lately. So, yep, and you can get a tour and see the locks.
There you go.
The ones that we don't use that are still installed in the doors because there's no reason to take them out.
Right.
So,
Well, thanks, Scott.
all right.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, Amanda, you ready to go again? Yeah. So if you go down to page 11, you'll get into Amanda's stuff. She's got a couple other things, maybe other than just the court-appointed attorneys we talked about.
Yeah, good to be up here again. So not a whole lot we're really asking for over the next 2 years. The last time courtroom furniture was updated was in the early 1990s. So a lot of the pneumatic devices on everything, including the counsel chairs and then the jury chairs, they don't work anymore. They'll hold you up for a little bit and then you slide down. And then you crank it back up and then you slide back down. So we're working on maybe trying to salvage those chairs. They're good looking chairs. I mean, they're wood, they look really nice. So I would like to be able to fix the pneumatics if possible. And then if we cannot, we'll need to replace some furniture. And then I guess currently we have an open bailiff 1 position, and this person typically did work release. Our work release numbers are back up, but they're nowhere near pre-pandemic levels. So we have some ideas of how we would like to fill that position, and then potentially, depending on what what the legislature does with problem-solving courts, and depending on what happens with LB 50, we might, and this is kind of a brainstorming thing that's going on in district court right now with the judges, we might assign that bailiff some bailiff duties to problem-solving courts. So that bailiff could be potentially the contact point for community corrections, for drug court, and then whatever, probation-based problem-solving courts that may or may not be created. So that's something we're also looking into. And then if we're officially starting the review for reevaluating positions, we've had the same staff attorney that is beloved by the judges. Mark Grimes, he is topped out at level 8 for his pay grade. So I don't necessarily know what happens when a valued employee is topped out. Do they get reevaluated? Is that something I would work with HR on? No?
I mean, I think on some of it, it just kind of depends. I mean,
Okay.
Because it kind of depends. Are they still doing their same duties?
Right.
If
Okay.
they are, then to me, I don't know what needs to be reevaluated, because you're really kind of, then you're really just kind of dealing with the COLA.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
so it's,
Okay.
it's kind of, I mean, it's got to kind of be to me, a change in job duties.
Okay, so we would have to audit, maybe compare what, if there's anything else changing with his duties versus what his job description is currently. Okay, that's good to know. The referee's office, they are on track. There are increased filings for child support. I think they've added a couple of county attorneys. Pat can address that. For child support filings. I don't know what that will look like in the next 2 years, if that's ever a possibility to need another child support referee or not, but that may be a possibility. Any questions? All right. Perfect.
Thanks,
Love
Amanda.
it. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Come on up, Jim. So this came in an email also to you. that Sage sent you. You can kinda,
Gotcha.
run
Yep, I was
that.
gonna say, all I need to do is
In a
roll
separate
through
email?
this. And Dennis, I was just
Yeah.
kidding when I said, hey, give me the last
Oh,
slot
yes,
before
I did
lunch.
see that. There it is.
The Wi-Fi's taking just a little bit, Jim.
Sure,
Hang-
yep.
Hang with us. Okay, ready? Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Outstanding. Good morning. Yeah, this is not a new topic for our tenured commissioners. I've made mention of it before, but I just kind of wanted to hit some of the high points. And if I could just take a minute or two to kind of give you a historical perspective of emergency management and specifically Lincoln Lancaster County Emergency Management. We have an emergency manager because state law says we're required to. And if you reach back 60-plus years, it's what used to be generically referred to as civil defense. So I think people have always had an understanding that somebody is out there keeping watch, so to speak, and officially it falls to emergency management. If you reach back nearly 25 years, the history of our local department, Doug Alberg was appointed the Director of Emergency Management. His first big deal was Y2K. I remember working with him at the time. And then, obviously, September 11th, 2001 was a game changer for everybody. But it did bring about a pretty significant change in emergency management through creation of the Emergency Management Performance Grant. And that funding is what allowed Doug to create a position in 2006. And he saw the need as his department continued to grow and develop to add a deputy director in 2010. I came on board in August of 2014. And Patty Talamonte had served as our emergency management specialist since that position was created in 2006. When she retired at the end of 2020, it gave us an opportunity to revise that job description. And Brooke Siefker is our current specialist who's been with us for almost 2 years now. So again, emergency management is a developing and growing discipline. And I've made mention of this before, but especially now as we roll into and through 2023, adding that ETO, that exercise training officer, we're really very well positioned in order to do that. This is just a snapshot of the population growth in Lancaster County, reaching back again nearly 25 years. And World Population Review estimates our county population will top more than 330,000 this year. So again, it's one of those things, growth and development, as long as it's under control and headed in the right direction, is definitely a good thing. We want to make sure that we have the staff readily available. Anything that poses a risk to the health, safety, and welfare of our general public is on emergency management's radar. So money is always the driving factor when it comes to these things. As I made mention, EMPG, the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which dates to about 2006, it allows us to get 50% reimbursement of our employees' salaries and benefits. And the fact that I'm a city-county department answering primarily to the county, but my budget is split after that EMPG contribution, the remaining budget is divided 50-50. So essentially we can add this new position at a 25% cost to Lancaster County. We've seen an increasing workload over the past few years. I think fire service, fire suppression is a good analogy to emergency management. What's the best way to deal with a problem? Prevent it in the first place, or if you do have a small fire start, the sooner you can put it out, the better. We've got a very good roadmap, a very good template to follow as well through that HSEEP program. Federal government really gives us a good idea of what we should do and then a realistic timeline on when we should do those things. Emergency management takes the lead when it's for promoting severe weather awareness. The statewide tornado drill, which dates to 2016 in Lancaster County, other than 2020 due to being sidelined by COVID, we've seen increasing participation across the county. Healthcare facilities, schools, everybody is really on board with that. And I think COVID, when I think back nearly 3 years ago, it really shone a light, not just on emergency management, but just kind of overall management in general. ICS, the incident command structure, really gives us a good model to follow. COVID it was and still is a public health crisis, but public health looked to emergency management for that incident command structure. Pat Lopez and her team at the health department still have their unified structure in place to deal with that. So again, it's one of those things where emergency management may not come to the forefront when people are considering or looking at that, but again, we make a significant contribution to that. The ETO position is one that's out there. Emergency management in general is a growing discipline. You can go to school, get your bachelor's degree, get your master's degree. The University of Nebraska at Omaha has a pretty strong program in that regard. And as far as that goes, like I said, the job description is readily available. I will certainly deal with HR when it comes to the specific description, things along those lines. The other thing about it too is we refer to it as a nominal 40-hour work week. If there's something that needs to be done, emergency management is on call to tend to that. And like I said, that doesn't come as any surprise, or any prospective applicants are certainly going to be aware of that. But I've seen an increasing interest in this, not just young people who may be new to the workforce, finishing their formal education and looking for a job. There are a lot of people out there interested in midlife job changes, things along those lines. So we can write a very strong job description, and I think interest in this position would be very significant. I've worked for local government my entire adult life, and I can say the satisfaction and the security of being a Lancaster County employee is kind of one of those a plus as well. People are always looking for the next big thing, so to speak. I think if you find a home with Lancaster County, you are in a good place. So not to make light of it, but I just have a graphic illustration regarding that. I can certainly answer any questions about the ETO. The other thing I wanted to touch on, I don't know if it will be Sheriff Wagner or Chief Deputy Houchin here this afternoon. Again, this is an issue that we have mentioned in the past. We've got a great working relationship with the Sheriff's Office right now, sharing the space that's out there at 444 Cherry Creek, just west of County Extension and the County Engineer's Office. Looking at that, or again, the discussions I've had with Terry and Ben about this, we had a couple of good options. Here it makes mentions of the specifics of a 5,100 square foot facility that would include a multi-purpose room that has a little over 1,100. The quote may be a little bit dated from May of 2022 at $1.1 million. But if you can see this, this is the layout. John Kay from Sinclair Hilly was the one that gave us these documents. It has 2 large bays and a smaller bay, and that's what we need for emergency management. That 3,000 square foot storage space allows us not only to transfer everything from the current space we share with LSO, gives us some room for growth and development, and obviously if the Sheriff's Department is able to take over the entire space of the current building, they're in a good place. And again, the multi-purpose training room there is in the lower right-hand corner. That would be, from my thought, that would be available to any county department. If you're looking for a meeting space, a classroom, whatever the case may be, and it's conveniently located at Cherry Creek that has ample parking. So that is the information that I wanted to share with you this morning. I will certainly answer any questions.
First of all, I appreciate the graphic. That just brings it down to my level, $0.25. But I did have a question, Dennis, or you, I'm not sure. So how does this work in an environment where there is a split with the city? If we were to approve a position, then do they have to do it as well? What does that process actually look like?
So basically, the way that it tends to work is really just kind of, we kind of go through our budget process, And when we're going through our budget process, they're somewhat going through their budget process. And so we make the determination. I don't know, Jim, that they really give approval for an additional staff. I think they more give approval for, here's our portion of what the interlocal is going to cost us. So I think that's how it would be handled.
Okay. Then also this Cherry Creek building that you provide the layout, what, just help me know what's currently in that space?
It's an empty parking lot, if you're familiar
Oh,
with
okay.
where the
It's an
gas
empty lot.
pumps are. And I had some more graphics I just wanted to show yet, but that was one of the things that in that process that we've been monitoring. I checked with Pam, excuse me, Pam with the county engineer's office, and that the space is available.
Yeah. I just pulled up the map. I was like, I can't tell which building it is, but it's because that
Correct.
building's
It's-
not there.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Other than on this drawing.
Yes.
right, essentially
And
the,
hopes and dreams for the future.
the southeast corner of that large surface lot that's straight south of the county extension office.
Okay.
There's questions about whether or not we could even build the building if we were also doing the county extension expansion that we've talked about.
Build it
I don't
for
know.
them.
There's a lot of ideas about that space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Jim.
One quick question, Jim. The exercise training officer, currently whatever exercise training's going on is handled by you and the staff then? And
Correct.
so this would allow us the opportunity to do expanded training that probably isn't feasible at this time?
Yes, and again, that's the nice thing about the HC process is that it gives you a realistic timeline to do these things. So it's a good problem to have when we get inquiries from businesses, from schools, that they would like to have a plan in place. Once you have a plan, you want to test that plan. So it's all part of that planning process, but yes, what it would allow us to do is say yes more often than we're able to now, just because there's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna agree with Matt here. That was pretty powerful little slide with the dollar and the quarter. Dennis never makes it that easy. Anyway.
He doesn't like to advertise to people that that's our level.
Glad the paper is not here, right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, just right on time here. So the thing that will be
Well
different
planned.
for us starting up at 12:30 is we'll be in the room next door.
Oh,
That's
Okay.
right. Take your stuff.
Because they'll be having, I think there's some hearings or something in this room this afternoon, so, just in case you walk through that door on your way over,
Yeah.
people might look at you as you're walking through here.
See y'all at 12:30.